Hey everyone, we got a standard deck tech here, another paper deck tech, because I've realized that this is pretty fun just to throw up your cell phone and show some actual real cards and not do some empty GO thing. So let me show you what I have here. It's basically a take on blue black control from standard. A lot of people are familiar with it, and that's actually the deck I started with. But there was a few problems I noticed with it that I set out to solve, and it basically involved me adding in 2 cast out, and 3 settle the wreckage main board, and then I also have some sideboard cards too. And there's also some other slight changes you'll see from the basic blue black list just on the overall play style of how this deck's going to run. Um, the other two problems I found with the blue black decks is it was kind of lacking a little bit in the threat density, so we ramped that up a bit, and then also how it was digging for cards I wasn't too thrilled on, so I fixed that. So let me quickly go over it, and I'll give my explanation on why I thought it was needed to change. So starting with the creature base, 2 Scarab God, 3 Torrential Gearhulk, pretty much what you're used to seeing with blue-black. Some lists play 3 Scarab Gods, which I personally think is too many. I did have 3 at first, and I just dropped it down to 2. 2 is fine. 3 is just complete overkill. Then we have 1 Noxious Gearhulk, which has some relevant life gain. It's another removal spell and an additional threat, so all around really cool there. And then we have 2 Gonti. Gonti, it's just an incredible card. I'm overall impressed. Had it in the sideboard to start and was just so impressed that I ended up moving it to the main board. So having the Death Touch, it can act as a removal and grind your creature-based matchups. It can act as card advantage, and it's also a really relevant creature when we're going against other control decks, which is cool. We can gain some value out of it. You'll see we're doing some pretty greedy things mana-wise with blue-blue, black-black. We have white-white on Settle the Wreckage. And the mana base so far has been pretty impressive that I haven't run any issues. Now, granted, it'll probably come up, from time to time, but we have some pretty good dual lands and able to run a 3-color mana base that so far I haven't had any problems, and I'm hoping it remains that way, and I'll show you what I have in a second. As far as removal goes, 3 Fatal Push, which is okay in this meta. I don't think you really need 4. It kind of loses steam, and we don't have a lot of ways to trigger Revolt. So other than some basic stuff in the red matchups, and like a Long Tusk Cub, it becomes very narrow. What I think to be the best removal spell in all of Standard right now is Vraska's Contempt. I think quite a lot of people would agree with me on that. Life gain's incredible against the red matchups. Exile's basically the key thing here, is because you can deal with the gods like Hazoret. You can deal with Scarab Gods and all these kind of things that just need to go away forever. And also, there's some scary Planeswalkers in the format right now with Chandra and Vraska. Obviously it's in the name, deals with it. And then moving on, we have 2 Cast Out, which is another one of the white cards we added. So this kind of acts like Vraska's Contempt copy 4 and 5 for exiling creatures. But one advantage this gives that the blue-black deck did not have before was the ability to eliminate other permanent types. So when you're playing against, like, say, God Pharaoh's Gift or something, and you need to actually deal with an artifact and get rid of it and then shut down their engine there, we actually have a main board answer to it, and we have some more answers in the sideboard for that kind of situation. And then let's see, obviously we can cycle it away if it's irrelevant, and then we can deal with Planeswalkers too. So it's just an overall great card, and I think 2 copies is right. No need to push it beyond that. And then lastly, Settle the Wreckage. The primary reason why I started to add white into the blue-black list, although, I'm a huge Esper player, so no surprise there, but despite my love of Esper decks, I think the blue-black deck had a very, very hard time catching up if it ever got behind at all. It was all 1-for-1 removal for the most part, and very low threat density, which this deck even still has a very low threat density but I would say for a control deck, it's pretty average. Running, 8 creatures total. I think usually a control deck's going to be 10 to 12, but 8's, it's okay for what we got going on. This helps you catch up. And this card is just so insane. You have Exile. It's instant speed asymmetrical wrath. Like, who cares that you ramp them? It's just too good for what you get out of it. And the fact that it's instant speed that I can actually flash back with Torrential Gearhulk just makes it that much better. So 3 copies. It reminds me of my modern deck where I'm playing blue-white control, and I'm running 3 or 4 copies of Supreme Verdict, and I can just basically stall, let standard player overextend, which they're easily going to do in this current meta, and then you just complete Wrath and just catch back up and then take over the game. It's a very, very cool card. Alright, moving on to how we're digging. So 4 Op, 2 Search for Conta, 3 Glimmer of Genius. I really like this setup here. We'll start with Search for Conta, very good card. I don't want multiples, I don't want a top deck, I just want 2 copies. The decks that run 3, I think that's pushing it a little far. I understand that they want to guarantee that they draw it, and especially if they can get on turn 2, that's pretty incredible. But it's not so detrimental to our game plan to not have it for me to worry about, drawing too many copies. Then Glimmer of Genius, my all-time favorite draw spell for the current standard meta. Was it Hieroglyphic Illuminations is an okay card. I'm not really a big fan. I think this is a lot better, especially with Gear Hulk. We're not running any other energy theme in the deck, so that part's irrelevant. But the Scry 2, then Draw 2 is just very good. And then for Opt, I'm choosing to not play Censor because I think Censor is a bit crappy of a card when we have such better counter magic and removal anyway. Beyond turn 2, you're never really going to use it as a counter spell. Like, okay, yeah, sure, it comes up everyone's going to comment below, yeah, no, I've won games with Sense and all that stuff. Sure, it can happen. But I would say the vast majority of the time you're going to be cycling away for just a single blue. And if I'm going to take 4 slots in my main board just to cantrip for a single blue, I'm going to use Opt because I get that Scry ability. It's just so much better. Okay, and then for counter magic, we have 2 Essence Scatter, 2 Supreme Will, and 3 Disallow. Now, Disallow goes without saying, it's the best counter spell in Standard right now, and it can just deal with literally anything. Supreme Will is essentially, an overcosted mana leak, but I like the second ability a lot, that we can dig for our cards. It's the same ability that's actually on Search for His Content when it's flipped. So if we're going against a little grindier matchup, or it becomes something that you top the deck in the late game, it still has relevance. Essence Scatter is a card I've gone back and forth on over like something, say, like Negate, because it is such a narrow counterspell just with creatures. But honestly, like, this meta is so creature based that, like, I was trying to think, I'm like, okay, say I did run Negate, what am I countering with Negate? And the list for that, as far as what people are running main board in the primary decks out there, is pretty slim. Other than like Planeswalkers and stuff like that, which I already have some answers to deal with, the Essence Scatter, it won me over. Okay, so moving on to the mana base, and the 3-color mana bases for Standard right now are probably the best that I've seen in a very long time. I think at least since, cons where you actually had fetch lands and everything. So what I have here is 2 Concealed Courtyard, 1 Irrigated Farmland, 3 Fetid Pool. So it's basically like a playset, but I'm doing a 3-1 split. Playset of Glacial Fortress, playset of Drowned Catacombs, 3 Evolving Wilds, which can help fix our mana, thin our deck, and then also it's our only way triggering a Revolt for Fatal Push, so that's pretty important. And then the rest just basics. I have 2 Plains, 3 Swamp, 3 Islands, and that seems to be working out just fine, even with the greedy cost on some of the cards with the double white, double blue. Haven't had any issues, so seems to be working out pretty awesome for me. I mean, it's primarily like a blue-black deck, except for Settle the Wreckage and Cast Out. So you really have 1 card that's going to be white-white, and then a couple sideboard cards, so it's not too hard to get there. Okay, moving on to the sideboard, we'll start with 4 copies of Duress, and that's going to be dealing with non-creature matchups, so I'm playing against blue-white control or blue-black control, or anything thereof, where cards like Fatal Push are just going to be dead. Next to Demystify, which it's kind of secret tech I haven't seen people be using too much. All these token strategies are popping up all over with both Esper and primarily with Abzan, Noided Procession, everything. This is a way for us to deal with it. So we already have the 2 Cast Out main board that can deal with those enchantments. And then this is just 2 more answers to that. In fact, this instant speed, we can also flash it back with Gear Hulk. It may be relevant. So definitely wanted to devote 2 spots to that. And there's also just all these flip cards too. like search for Escanta and everything. A lot of these legendary enchantments floating around, that this is going to be relevant more times than you may think. Enchantment removal, I haven't really seen any use for it in Standard in a long time. I used to use, more recently, I would use Fragmentize to deal with, all the artifact stuff floating around, like all the vehicles and everything, but this is basically taking over the spot. Just a meta call. Speaking of meta calls, 2 Lost Legacy, which can be good in almost every matchup. You could argue mainboarding these, but it's pretty much for blue-white approach decks. If you approach the second sun, they essentially just lose. The only thing they can deal with after that is they have Gideon, which isn't hard for us to deal with, and sometimes they board in some like Gear Hulks or the Caracals, which once again, that's easy for us to deal with. So it's pretty much game over if we can resolve this card. Helping us resolve the card, 3 Negate, some additional counter magic. Negate's always good. Shouldn't have to go into too much explanation there. In the matchups where all this removal, which I do have quite a lot of removal main board, especially like things like the board wipes, Settle the Wreckage, are just going to be dead cards. Boom, the negates come in place of. I'm a little annoyed when a gate art isn't matching there. I'm going to have to do something about that. And then 2 Fumigate, so some additional board wipes, so we can go up to 5 full sweepers, which should be enough against the really fast aggro decks or the token strategy. So if we're playing against tokens, these are coming in, and then also Fumigate's going to come in against Ramen Up Red, just to deal with the board, and then also give you a bit of life gain. Speaking of life gain and removal, we have a singleton copy of Essence Extraction, and then the 4th copy of Fatal Push. Now we're going to want that copy of Fatal Push against Teamer Energy. Long Tusk Cub is going to be kind of a huge problem for us, so we might get rid of something, say like a Disallow or one of the slower, clunkier cards in place of a Fatal Push, just so we have a little more action in the early game. And that's the deck. Any questions, feel free to reach out, and I hope to bring you more paper deck techs like this. Super casual, just my cell phone and myself talking. I'm going to try to keep all the high-tech stuff out. I've tried to do that in the past, and I just end up making videos and not finishing them because I don't want to deal with all the editing and junk. So we'll just do this for now, and it's fun, and try to keep it light. Alright guys, take care.